The town did not appear on most maps. If it did, it was usually marked as a dot, so small it looked accidental, like a printing error. Blackwood falls sat somewhere between dense pine forests and an old, drying river in the northern part of the country. People passed near it, rarely through it. Those who stopped often stayed longer than they planned. Those who left seldom spoke about it again. On the surface, Blackwood Falls was quiet. Too quiet. White wooden houses with front porches that had not been painted in years. Streetlights that flickered even when there was no wind. A main road that curved gently through town, as if it were trying to avoid something buried beneath the ground. Every evening at exactly 6:47 p.m., the church bell rang once. Not twice, not for prayer, just once. No one in town questioned it anymore. Jonah Miller first noticed this on the night he arrived. His car rolled into town just as the fog began to thicken, crawling low across the road like breath from the earth itself. The GPS screen flickered, froze, then went black. Jonah sighed, tapped it once, then again. Nothing. Great, he muttered, leaning back in his seat. He was a journalist by trade, though lately he had started to wonder if that word still meant anything. Newspapers were dying. Stories were recycled. Truth had become something flexible. But this town, this place, had caught his attention for reasons he couldn't fully explain. 3 months earlier, a short article had crossed his desk, barely 2 paragraphs. No author name. It mentioned Blackwood Falls and a pattern of disappearances that had never been officially labeled as such. People hadn't gone missing, the article claimed. They had simply stopped being acknowledged. Jonah had laughed at first. Small town paranoia, poor record keeping. But the more he researched, the stranger became. Census data inconsistent. Death certificates missing. Entire families appearing in records one year and erased the next, as if they had never existed. And now he was here. The moment Jonah stepped out of his car, the air felt heavier. Not colder, just thicker. The fog smelled faintly metallic, like old rainwater sitting in rusted pipes. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then went silent. The bell rang. A single, hollow sound echoed to the town, low and heavy, vibrating through Jonah's chest rather than his ears. He looked at his watch. 6:47 p.m. That's oddly specific, he whispered. Across the street, a woman stood on her porch, watching him. She was elderly, her back slightly hunched, hands folded together as if in prayer. When Jonah raised his hand in a polite wave, she didn't respond. She just stared, eyes unblinking, until the bell's echo faded. Then, slowly, she turned and went inside, closing the door with deliberate care. Jonah swallowed and reached back into his car, pulling out his bag. The only motel in town was called the Pine Rest. The sign out front flickered, the word rest losing power every few seconds, so it read the Pine. Inside, the air smelled of dust and lemon cleaner. The lobby was empty except for a man behind the desk, mid-50s maybe, with deep lines carved into his face like he spent most of his life squinting against bright light or bad memories. Evening, Jonah said. The man looked up slowly. His eyes lingered on Jonah's face longer than necessary. "You're not from here," he said. "No," Jonah replied. "Just passing through. Need a room." The man nodded, reached for a key without asking for ID. "People usually don't pass through," he said quietly. "They either stay the night or they don't." Jonah frowned. "What does that mean?" The man slid the key across the desk. "Room 6. End of the hall. Don't open your window after dark." Jonah hesitated. "Is there something wrong with the windows?" The man met his gaze. For a brief second, something flickered across his face. Fear. Or maybe recognition. "Just a suggestion," he said. "Breakfast is at 7. If you hear the bell, don't go outside." "The church bell?" Jonah asked. The man's fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. "Yes." Jonah took the key. "Thanks." As he walked down the narrow hallway, the lights buzzed softly above him. The carpet muffled his footsteps, but he had the strange sensation that someone else was walking just behind him, matching his pace. He stopped abruptly. The feeling vanished. Inside the room, everything looked untouched. Too untouched. The bedspread was perfectly smooth. The air smelled stale, like a room that hadn't been opened in years. Jonah sat on the bed and pulled out his notebook. Blackwood Falls. Population, unclear. Atmosphere, unsettling. Residents, evasive. He paused, pen hovering over the page. At exactly 11:13 p.m., he heard footsteps outside his door. Slow, measured, they stopped right in front of his room. Jonah held his breath. A soft sound followed. Not a knock, more like fingernails brushing gently against the wood. Then a voice, barely above a whisper. "Don't answer if you hear your name." Jonah's heart slammed against his ribs. "Who's there?" he called out. Silence. After a long moment, the footsteps moved away. Jonah didn't sleep that night. When morning came, the fog was still there, clinging to the town as if it had no intention of leaving. Jonah stepped outside and noticed something immediately. The road he had driven in on was gone. In its place stood a line of trees, thick and unbroken, as if the town had always been sealed off from the rest of the world. And somewhere beneath the ground, something rang. Not a bell, but an answer. The morning felt wrong in a way Jonah couldn't explain. The sky was a pale, washed-out gray, like color had been drained from it overnight. The fog still clung to the streets, thinner now but stubborn, curling around doorways and street signs as if it were listening. Jonah stood at the edge of the motel parking lot, staring at the wall of trees where the road should have been. He walked closer, heart thudding, pushing aside low branches and damp leaves. There was no pavement beneath them, no tire marks, no sign that a road had ever existed. "This is impossible," he whispered. Behind him, gravel crunched. Jonah turned sharply. The man from the motel desk stood a few feet away, holding a cigarette he wasn't smoking. Smoke drifted upward anyway, thin and sour. "You shouldn't go into the trees," the man said. "The road was here," Jonah replied. "I drove in last night." The man nodded slowly. "People usually do." Jonah stared at him. "What does that mean?" The man looked past Jonah, toward the trees. "Blackwood Falls doesn't like being left. Not once it notices you." Jonah laughed, the sound brittle. "Look, if this is some kind of joke." "It's not," the man interrupted. His voice wasn't angry, just tired. "Eat breakfast. Walk around town. Try not to draw attention. Things may adjust." "Adjust?" Jonah echoed. The man flicked his cigarette into the dirt. "They usually do." Before Jonah could ask anything else, the man turned and walked back toward the motel, his shoulders slightly hunched, as if he were carrying weight that couldn't be put down. Breakfast was served in a small room off the lobby. 3 people sat at separate tables, all silent. A woman in her 30s stirred a cup of coffee that had gone cold. An older couple sat side by side, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the wall. Jonah poured himself some coffee. It tasted weak, watered down, but he drank it anyway. "Excuse me," he said, approaching the woman. "How long have you lived here?" She looked up slowly. Her eyes were rimmed red, as if she hadn't slept. "All my life," she said. Jonah smiled politely. "So you must know everyone." She hesitated, just for a second. "I know who's still here," she replied. Jonah felt a chill creep up his spine. "People leave, right?" Her spoon stopped moving. "Sometimes." The bell rang, one single note. Even in daylight, it felt heavy, pressing down on Jonah's chest. The woman flinched, her coffee sloshing over the rim. "What happens when the bell rings?" Jonah asked. The woman leaned closer, lowering her voice. "It means someone's been counted." "Counted for what?" She looked toward the doorway, then back at Jonah. "You'll understand soon enough." After breakfast, Jonah walked into town. Shops lined the main street, their windows clean but strangely empty. A bookstore with shelves that held only a handful of identical leather-bound volumes. A clothing store displaying the same outfit in 3 different sizes. A grocery with fresh produce but no prices listed. People watched him as he passed. Not openly, just enough to let him know he was being noticed. At the town square stood the church. Its stone exterior was darkened with age, ivy creeping up its sides like veins. The bell tower loomed overhead, silent now but oppressive. Jonah pushed open the heavy wooden doors. Inside, the church was dim and cool. Rows of pews stretched toward the altar, all empty. Candles flickered along the walls, though Jonah couldn't see anyone tending them. Near the altar stood a man in a dark coat, his back turned. "Hello," Jonah called. The man turned slowly. He was young, too young to be a priest, Jonah thought. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, and his smile didn't reach them. "You heard the bell," the man said. "Yes," Jonah replied. "Everyone did." The man nodded. "Then it's begun." "What has?" "The remembering." Jonah felt his pulse quicken. "Who are you?" "Someone who stayed too long," the man said softly. "Like you?" "I'm not staying," Jonah snapped. "I just need directions out." The man stepped closer. "There are no directions, only depth." Jonah frowned. "Depth of what?" The man gestured downward toward the stone floor. Blackwood Falls was built on a fault, not in the earth, in people. Jonah took a step back. "You're not making sense." "That's how it starts," the man said gently. "First the roads disappear, then the names." Jonah's phone buzzed in his pocket. The sound startled him. He pulled it out quickly. No signal, but there was a notification, a voicemail. Jonah frowned. He hadn't received a call. He pressed play. At first, there was only static, then breathing. Shallow, familiar. "Jonah," a voice whispered. His blood ran cold. It was his own voice. "You shouldn't have come here." The message ended. Jonah stared at the screen, hands shaking. "How did you do that?" The man tilted his head. "We didn't." "We?" "The town," the man said. "It listens, it learns, then it speaks back." Jonah turned and ran. He didn't know where he was going. Streets twisted and looped in ways they hadn't before. The bookstore was gone. The grocery stood abandoned, windows dark. Houses leaned closer together, porches nearly touching, as if the town were closing in on itself. Jonah burst into the motel lobby, gasping for breath. The desk was empty. He heard movement behind the wall, a low murmuring, dozens of voices overlapping, too quiet to understand but too loud to ignore. The sound seemed to come from beneath the floor. Jonah dropped to his knees, pressing his ear against the carpet. The murmuring grew clearer. Names, spoken slowly, carefully, as if being counted. Jonah stumbled back, heart pounding. At exactly 6:47 p.m., the bell rang again. This time, Jonah knew, it wasn't calling people to prayer. It was calling them to stay. And somewhere, deep beneath Blackwood Falls, something had learned his name. Jonah locked himself inside room 6 as the light outside began to fade. He pushed the small dresser against the door, though he wasn't sure what he expected it to stop. Sound, maybe, or whatever part of the town seemed able to move without footsteps. He sat on the edge of the bed, notebook open in his hands, staring at the words he had already written. They didn't look like his own handwriting anymore. The letters leaned slightly to the left, as if pulled by something beneath the page. He tried to remember when that had started happening. At 6:46 p.m., the room felt tighter, not smaller, just closer, like the walls had leaned in a fraction of an inch. Testing him. Jonah checked his watch. At 6:47, the bell rang. This time it wasn't distant. It felt internal, vibrating through his teeth, his ribs, his skull. He clutched the edge of the bed and waited for the echo to fade. It didn't. It simply dissolved into a pressure that lingered behind his eyes. A knock followed almost immediately. 3 slow taps. Jonah didn't move. The knock came again, slightly louder. "Jonah," a voice said softly from the other side of the door. His stomach dropped. He knew that voice. "Mom," he whispered. Silence. Then the voice again, closer to the door now. "Open up. You're upsetting them." Jonah stood abruptly, backing away. His mother had been dead for 7 years. "Stop," he said. "Just stop." The voice sighed, not angrily, patiently. You always did take time to listen. Something brushed the door from the outside, not a hand, but a dragging pressure, like someone leaning their full weight against it. The dresser creaked, but held. Then the pressure lifted. Footsteps moved away. Jonah didn't sleep. He sat with his back against the wall, eyes fixed on the door, counting his breaths until dawn thinned the darkness into something survivable. Morning brought noise. Real noise. Cars starting. Doors opening. Voices calling out greetings. For a moment, Jonah wondered if he had imagined everything. He stepped outside. The motel parking lot was full. Cars he hadn't seen the night before lined the spaces. People stood talking, laughing softly, sipping coffee from paper cups. The man from the front desk leaned against the wall, watching Jonah with an expression that might have been relief. "You see," the man said, "it settles." Jonah stared. Where did everyone come from? The man shrugged. They were always here. Jonah scanned the crowd. Faces blurred together, unfamiliar but oddly repetitive. The same woman from breakfast stood near the ice machine, still stirring coffee. The same older couple sat on a bench, hands clasped, unmoving. "They don't look right," Jonah said. The man's jaw tightened. "Neither do you." Jonah turned away and walked into town again, this time with purpose. He needed proof. Something solid. Something that didn't shift when he looked at it too closely. He went to the town hall. It was a squat brick building with a faded American flag, hanging limp out front. Inside, the air smelled of paper and mildew. Rows of filing cabinets lined the walls. Behind a desk sat a woman with neatly tied hair and glasses perched low on her nose. She smiled when she saw Jonah. "You must be new," she said. "I don't recognize you." "I'm looking for records," Jonah replied. "Census, death certificates, anything unusual." She nodded too quickly. "Everything's in order." Jonah stepped closer. "Then you won't mind if I look." Her smile faltered. "Just a little. We prefer to assist." Jonah opened a nearby drawer. Before she could stop him, files filled the cabinet, neatly labeled. He pulled one at random. The page listed a family of 4. Names, dates, addresses. Then he blinked. The ink shifted. The names blurred, then faded entirely, leaving behind blank lines as if they had never been written. Jonah dropped the file. "What the hell is this?" The woman stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You shouldn't force it." "Force what?" "The remembering," she said softly. "It hurts them." Jonah backed away. "Who is them?" Her eyes flicked downward. Those who stayed too long to leave and too short to disappear. The bell rang. This time, it was followed by a scream. It came from somewhere close. A sharp, human sound, cut off abruptly. Jonah ran without thinking, pushing past the woman and out into the street. A crowd had gathered near the edge of town, by the tree line. People stood in a loose circle, quiet, respectful, as if attending a service. In the center knelt a teenage boy, maybe 16. His hands were pressed over his ears, his face twisted in terror. "I didn't mean to listen," the boy sobbed. "I swear, I didn't mean to hear it." A man Jonah recognized from the grocery store stepped forward. "It's already done." The boy looked up, eyes wild. "Please, I'll forget everything." The ground beneath the boy shifted, not dramatically, just enough. The earth seemed to soften, darkening, pulling at his knees like wet clay. The boy screamed as his legs sank inch by inch. Jonah pushed forward. "Stop. Someone help him." No one moved. The boy's cries turned hoarse as the ground swallowed him to the waist, then the chest. His hands clawed at the dirt, leaving deep grooves that closed as quickly as they were made. Within seconds, he was gone. The earth smoothed itself over. Silence followed. Someone in the crowd whispered a name. Jonah didn't hear whose. The people began to disperse, calm, efficient, as if this were routine. Jonah stood shaking, bile rising in his throat. You just let him die. The man from the grocery store met his eyes. He wasn't taken. Then what do you call that? Being kept, the man said. The town doesn't waste what listens too deeply. Jonah felt something cold settle in his chest. And what about me? The man hesitated. You're not from here. Jonah laughed weakly. Neither was he. That night, Jonah found fresh dirt beneath his motel bed. It was still damp, and pressed into it over and over, as if by desperate fingers, were words written backward. Stay quiet, or you'll be heard. Somewhere below, the town shifted, and Blackwood Falls adjusted its count. Jonah didn't clean the dirt. He stared at it until sunrise bled to the thin curtains, turning the damp soil a rusty brown. The words were still there, even in daylight. They hadn't been a dream. The motel hadn't tried to hide them. That scared him more than if it had. He packed his bag fast. Not neatly, just enough to leave. He didn't bother checking out. When he opened the door, the front of the motel was already awake. Too awake. Every room door was open. People stood in the walkways, silent, facing inward toward the courtyard, like an audience waiting for something to begin. Their heads turned together when Jonah stepped out. No bell rang. That was worse. Jonah walked quickly, then faster, then broke into a run as he reached the road leading out of town. His car sat where he'd left it. Relief surged through him so sharply almost hurt. He shoved the key into the ignition. Nothing. The dashboard lights flickered once, then went dark. He tried again. The engine coughed weakly, like something clearing its throat, then died. Jonah slammed the steering wheel. No. A shadow fell across the windshield. He looked up. The man from the front desk stood there, hands folded calmly. Behind him, others gathered, not crowding, just present. You can't leave during adjustment, the man said. Jonah opened the door and stepped out. Adjustment to what? To you, the man replied. You're loud. Jonah shook his head. I haven't said anything. The man smiled sadly. That's not what we mean. Something deep beneath the road vibrated, faint but steady, like a distant engine. Jonah felt it in the soles of his feet. Whatever this place is, Jonah said, I don't belong to it. Not yet, the man agreed. But you hear too clearly. That makes you useful. The vibration stopped. Silence slammed down so hard Jonah's ears rang. Then the bell rang once. Jonah screamed, not out loud. Inside his head, images flooded him. Faces pressed against dirt, mouths open in soundless cries, hands reaching upward from darkness. He saw the town as it had been decades ago. Different buildings, same shape, same people, always the same people. They weren't alive. They weren't dead. They were held. Jonah collapsed to his knees. You're feeding it. The man crouched in front of him. We're maintaining it. What is it? Jonah whispered. The man looked toward the ground, a place that listens. Long ago, people here found something under the town, a cavity, a hollow that answered when called. It took grief, regret, noise that couldn't settle. Jonah swallowed, and now it answers on its own. Jonah pushed himself up and ran, not toward the road, toward the sound. He followed the pull through back streets and overgrown paths, past houses that leaned inward as he passed, their windows dark and watching. The vibration returned the closer he got, guiding him like a compass. At the edge of town stood the old church. Its doors were open. Inside, the air was cold and wet. The floorboards creaked under Jonah's weight as he walked down the aisle. At the altar, the floor had collapsed inward, revealing a black opening beneath. A hole, not rough, not broken, smooth, intentional. The bell rang again, quieter this time, almost affectionate. Jonah stepped closer and peered down. He saw faces, hundreds of them, pressed together in darkness, eyes open, mouths moving in perfect silence. They weren't screaming. They were listening. A voice rose from below, layered and overlapping, familiar and foreign all at once. Stay. Jonah staggered back. No, you hear us, the voice said. You carry us. You'll keep us. Jonah laughed hysterically. You already have everyone. Not everyone leaves, the voice replied. Some replace. The church doors slammed shut behind him. The bell rang again, and for the first time, Jonah realized something worse than being trapped. The town wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to make him stay long enough to stop screaming. And Blackwood Falls was very patient. Jonah backed away until his shoulders hit the cold stone wall. The sound of the bell hadn't faded. It had settled inside him, a low pressure behind his eyes, like a thought that wasn't his own. "Stop," he whispered, though he didn't know who he was talking to. The hole, the town, himself. The faces below the church floor shifted, subtly, like a single organism breathing. Their mouths kept moving, shaping words Jonah couldn't hear but somehow understood. "We learned to be quiet." His head snapped up. "I didn't ask you anything. You don't need to. You're already listening." The church lights flickered on by themselves, dim and yellow, revealing rows of pews carved with names. Hundreds of names. Some deep and careful. Others scratched in panic. Letters uneven, unfinished. Jonah recognized one. His own. Fresh. The wood around it still pale. "No," he said, shaking his head. "That's not possible." Footsteps echoed behind him. He turned. The woman from the diner stood near the entrance now, apron gone, her hands clean. Her eyes looked softer here, almost relieved. "I tried not to look at the names for years," she said quietly. "It's easier when you don't see them." Jonah's voice cracked. "How long have you been here?" She smiled faintly. "Long enough that I stopped counting days and started counting people who arrive." "How many leave?" She didn't answer. The bell rang again, lower this time, deeper, like it was settling into the earth. "It hurts less if you don't fight it," she said. "At first it's loud, then it becomes background." Jonah pressed his palms against his ears. The sound didn't stop. "What happens if I don't?" he asked. Her expression changed. Not threatening, pitying. Then it listens harder. The floor beneath them trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. From the hole rose a breath, warm, damp, smelling of soil and rust. Jonah felt something pull at his chest, not physically, but emotionally, like a hook catching on memories. His father's voice, his mother's laugh, the argument he never finished, the message he never sent. "You collect regrets," Jonah said hoarsely. The woman nodded. "It feeds on unfinished noise." The bell rang again, and suddenly Jonah wasn't in the church anymore. He was in a hospital room, fluorescent lights buzzing. A man lay on a bed, pale, eyes unfocused. Jonah recognized him instantly. Himself. Older, thinner, tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Machines beeped steadily. Then they stopped. The bell rang. Jonah gasped and staggered back into the church, heart hammering. "You showed me my death." "No," the woman said gently. "We showed you a possibility." The faces in the hole began to sink, slowly, as if the darkness were swallowing them deeper. New ones rose to replace them. Younger, fresher, terrified. Jonah understood then. The town didn't just trap people. It recycled them. "You keep the town quiet," he said. "You give it listeners." She nodded again. "And it keeps us here. Between." Jonah looked at the hole, at the names, at the doors he already knew wouldn't open. The bell rang once more. And this time, Jonah didn't scream. He listened, and somewhere beneath Blackwood Falls, something vast and patient shifted, please, as Jonah's silence finally began to take shape. Jonah woke to silence, so complete it felt artificial, like a soundproof room built inside a skull. The bell was gone. Not distant, not faint. Gone. For a moment, relief washed over him. Then he realized something worse. He couldn't remember what the bell sounded like. He sat up slowly. He wasn't in the church anymore. He lay on a narrow bed in a small room with yellowed wallpaper and a single window. Morning light leaked through thin curtains. A motel room, the same one. The dirt patch by the door was clean now. No words. No warning. Jonah swung his legs over the side of the bed. His body felt lighter. Not rested. Emptied. Outside a car passed. An engine. A laugh. Normal sounds. He froze, waiting for the bell to interrupt him. It didn't. At the front desk, the man smiled when he saw Jonah. Not the sad smile from before. A genuine one. Check out, he asked. Jonah nodded, surprised his throat worked. Yeah. The man slid a receipt across the counter. Roads clear today. Jonah took the key, then hesitated. The town. The man tilted his head. What town? Jonah opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He left. Blackwood Falls faded behind him in a rearview mirror, without resistance. No vibration. No pull. No sound beneath the road. By the time he reached the highway, he felt foolish, exhausted, like someone waking from a dream already dissolving. Days passed, then weeks. Jonah returned to his apartment, went back to work, answered emails, laughed at the right moments, slept through the night. Mostly. Sometimes, while brushing his teeth, he'd pause, toothbrush still, staring at his reflection, waiting for something he couldn't name. Sometimes, late at night, he'd turn off the TV and sit in the quiet, heart racing, convinced he was missing a sound. But life moved forward, until the first letter arrived. No return address, just his name, written carefully. Inside was a single sentence. We can't hear it anymore. Jonah laughed it off. Then the second letter came. It's getting louder. The third arrived with a small smear of dirt in the corner. You took it with you. That night, Jonah lay awake as a familiar pressure returned behind his eyes. Not sound. Not yet. A presence. He sat up. From somewhere deep beneath the city, far below concrete and pipes and subway tunnels, something shifted. And Jonah finally understood. Blackwood Falls hadn't let him go. It had let the bell travel. The first faint ring sounded just before dawn, soft enough that only Jonah heard it. And somewhere, far away, another town began to listen.